Hi, I'm Alan Ferguson. I'm Company Head Pastry Chef for Buzzworks Holdings, and today I'm going to show you how to make passion fruit tart in a step-by-step process. I do hope you enjoy, and good luck. Here we have 400 grams of plain flour, 120 grams of caster sugar, 250 grams of butter, and 1 egg whisked. Okay, we take our plain flour into the bowl and add in our sugar. We can give that a little mixture with our hands just to make sure there's no big lumps of flour. There's no need to sieve it. As you could see, you're going to be rubbing in the butter anyway, so it's a case of that every time you rub in the butter, you will be removing any big lumps. I've taken the time to cut the butter into small cubes. That's just going to make it easier, quicker, make your job a lot easier when it comes to rubbing in the sweet pastry. So you're just going to take it and you're going to rub the butter and the flour together quite vigorously, making sure that you're squeezing every time to soften that butter with your fingers and eventually incorporating it into sandy-like texture. As you can see, we've incorporated most of the butter now and the mixture has a sand-like texture. There's still some, relatively small amount of butter left over, but you will need this dough. You'll work this dough once you add in your wet ingredients, so there's no need to be scared of having any sort of lumpy bits of butter because you'll work that out with your hands. So when you get it to that stage, sand-like texture, if you just make a well in the middle, add in your 1 egg, and then just work the egg mixture into the pastry with your hands, squeezing firmly, and this will incorporate into a ball of dough. And once it does, you can take it out of your bowl onto your work surface, and we can give it a knead before we put it into the fridge. The dough is now formed. We can take it out of its bowl and we can really give it a good working on our work surface, allowing it to come together a lot nicer. I want to give this just a couple of firm pushes down, working away from yourself, pushing it into the table, allowing the table to do a lot of the work for you. And once your dough, look at it, it's nice and smooth now. Once it's into a firm ball, you can, roughly about that size, that's the perfect size to start rolling it out with your rolling pin. Wrap up in cling film, put it into the fridge to chill 20-30 minutes before we roll it out with a rolling pin, form our tart shell. After our 20-30 minutes chilled pastry, we'll take it out now and we'll take our rolling pin, a little bit of flour just for the top and the bench, just to make sure that it doesn't stick. And we're just going to go forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards and backwards. Every time rotating the pastry, making sure that it doesn't stick, because once it sticks it becomes a real hassle. But that's where the flour comes into play. So if you ever get worried that your dough is going to stick again, you can put a little bit more flour down. And that will stop your sweet pastry from spreading. And again, every time you roll forwards, you roll backwards, just turn it every so often. Make your life a lot easier. Forwards and backwards. Gently picking it up because it can tear. Forwards and backwards, until you reach the desired thickness, roughly maybe 2mm, 3mm, just whatever you can manage. It won't make that much of a difference. Nice square bit of dough there. You can then cut out and line our tart. Now that our pastry is rolled out to size, we'll take a mould. I'm using a large metal bowl here, and we'll just use it with a knife, going right round the edge to make a circle shape. lift it off, remove the excess pastry, leave to one side, and that's your shape for your tart. We're going to take our tart mould here, whatever you can manage to find in your house, whatever you desire. It makes no difference at all. I just have a large round tart mould here and some bake spray, which is similar to a 1 calorie spray you'll find in the shops, but you can alternatively use butter or a little bit of vegetable oil. Just make sure that once you've put the butter or the vegetable oil onto your tart mould, that you wipe off any excess, because it will just affect the tart when it's in its process of baking. A sort of light spray with the one spray, the bake spray, to stop the mould. So it just comes out, once it's cooked, it will come out relatively easy. And we're going to pop our pastry as centre as we can, making sure that we take the time to judge it as much as we can, that it's central all the way around, right in the middle. And then we just take our first fold and we go inwards, right down to the bottom, really gently, really delicately. I can't stress that enough, because especially if this is your first time doing it, it can tear, it's easily teared. Making sure that the bottom parts are all filled in. You're just going to take your thumb and first finger here and gently tuck over the edges, using your other hand, your other thumb, to press inwards and shape into the tart mould. Just nice and gently, just tucking it over, so that's what you're seeing. And again, like I say, just using your other thumb, this hand, to press inwards. Just taking your time, nice and gently, all the way around. If you can go at speeds like me, I'll give you a job. So there we go. And then I'm going to take our knife and we're just going to trim the edges. Once we've tucked everything in, trim the edges. Depending on what tart mould you use, you might not need to use it. You can bake it first and then trim the edges, but I find it's easier if you trim beforehand. You won't get a lot of shrinkage from this pastry. It's a relatively good, very good recipe actually. One well worth using. This is our finished tart mould before we have started the baking process. We will blind bake this and you'll get to see that as well. Alternatively, if you don't feel comfortable about making the sweet pastry lining tart mould, you can buy one from the supermarket. It will be just as good, but it's sometimes nice to have that reward within yourself once you've accomplished something as technical as lining a tart mould. And of course making your own sweet pastry and the whole process that comes with it. Now that we have lined our tart mould, we're going to take some cling film here, ordinary household cling film, and we're going to make it roughly about twice the size of our tart mould. Four or five sheets. Pat it down with your hands, and then once it's all pressed together, again in the centre, and you're going to tuck that down, making sure you get into the lining at the bottom, up the sides, nice and gentle. And then we have some just ordinary long grain rice that we can use for our blind baking process, but any dried pulse will do. Baking beans. This is what we call the process of blind baking. It's cooking the tart without the filling. And then just fold in your cling film, making sure that it stays up, pushing it out so that the rice stays up at the sides, which will eliminate any shrinkage of the pastry as it cooks. Firmly pressing down with your hands. And our tart is now ready to be blind baked. We're going to blind bake that for around about 30 minutes and then we can remove the rice after 30 minutes and then cook it until it's got a golden brown colour for another 8-10 minutes. Now that the time has passed, around about 30 minutes, gently and safely remove our baking beans, and we can see that our tart is, it's nearly there, getting nice and golden brown around the edges. This is why we remove the rice or the baking beans, whatever you're using, and we cook the middle. You can see it's still slightly raw in the middle there. So again, further 8 minutes. We'll start off with 8 minutes and then have a look at it. 10 minutes if needs be, but absolutely no more. To get our egg yolks for our curd tart filling recipe, this is a quick demonstration just how to separate the egg yolks from the white. We'll crack our eggshell in half and then just gently go in between the two halves of the eggshell until the white falls, and you're left with just the yolk. We're going to go through our ingredients. These are our ingredients to make our tart filling. Here we have 200 millilitres of passion fruit puree. This is the one that we use, but you can find this from any online retailer. We have 200 grams of butter, unsalted, 60 grams of sugar, 50 grams of egg yolks, 3 whole eggs, 60 grams of white chocolate, and 1 sheet of leaf gelatin. We take our first 2 ingredients, which is the passion fruit puree, into our saucepan, and all of our butter, and we're going to bring that mixture together at medium heat till it comes to a simmer. In our saucepan, as we have our puree and our butter, just a bit gently with the whisk. Like I said before, we're going to bring that on a medium heat up to just a simmer, just before boiling point. It's just coming up to a slow boil, gentle simmer. All your butter is melted. It's ready to be poured into the egg and sugar mixture. So into our metal bowl, we will add in our 3 whole eggs, 3 egg yolks, 50 grams of egg yolks, and our 60 grams of caster sugar. Then we have our 3 ingredients in here, the whole eggs, egg yolks and sugar. Gently whisk them together until the sugar has dissolved. Make sure you get all the bits around the sides. Gently mix. And then we have our melted butter and puree. I'm just going to gently add this in, nice and slowly, just in case the mixture splits or curdles. And then incorporate all the ingredients together. And this is now ready to be put onto a bain-marie water bath. And the heat from that is going to cook it, thicken it, and it'll be almost ready to pour into our tart mould. Now that we have primarily all of our ingredients ready to go into a bain-marie, which is a water bath. So it's a pan of boiling water which you'll have in your metal bowl with your tart filling will go on top just like that, and you'll gently see it come together. It'll cook out, and what you're looking for is it to leave what we call the ribbon stage, which you'll see later on. We have our leaf gelatin here, which you can buy in any supermarket. In fact, this is 1 full sheet. I think it comes like that in the supermarket, so you might need 2, depending on the size. For it to work, we have to cover it into cold water. Please don't use hot water or boiling water, as it will ruin the gelatin. It needs to bloom in cold water. Bloom is just the technical term of it softening. And just to submerge it in water, and that should take probably around, it's only a single sheet, anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes to soften, and you'll see that process once it happens. So it's been around about 5 minutes since we submerged the gelatin into water, and you can see it's taken on a totally different shape. It's pliable, it's soft, and that's exactly what you need it like. Now remember, hot water won't do this. It'll melt. It won't. It just it's completely melts the gelatin. It has to be cold water, and you can see how flimsy and flexible it's become, and that is perfect. Once our tart mixture has come up to the ribbon stage, which you'll see later on, the gelatin and the chocolate get added into it. So that's been around about 5 minutes since the water came up to boil, and you can see here how thick the mixture's gotten. And if I just take out a little bit of the mixture here, you can see that it leaves a trail behind, which is, you know, what we call the ribbon stage. I'm just going to brush it in the sides with a spatula, and that mixture's perfect. That is now ready to go into its final stage before it gets put into the tart mould, where we'll add the gelatin, we'll add the white chocolate. With our mixture still at a relatively hot temperature, and we now have our softened gelatin, that's the first thing to go into it. Just with the back of our spatula or whisk. It doesn't make too much of a difference. We're just going to make sure that folds nicely through, and we can add in our white chocolate, which helps as a flavouring and a setting agent. We're mixing in our ingredients here, and you can see that the white chocolate's starting to melt, but this'll take a couple of minutes. So while we're waiting for our white chocolate to fully melt, we'll come back over to our tart mould, our tart case that's fully baked. And we'll pop it out of our mould. I'm lucky enough here to have the tart mould that can be popped out from the bottom. I'll just put this onto our board. As you can't, once you've added your mixture, you can't pick up the tart shell. It runs the risk of it breaking. By now we should see that, yeah, you can see that the white chocolate's now started, it's fully melted. And just make sure you get right down the sides. You're going to use every last bit of it. Just from the back of the spatula. Yeah. At this point, if you wanted to, you could add in some fresh passion fruit, so you've got the seeds. I personally don't like it. It can be, you know, they can be sometimes quite hard on the tooth. If you wanted to, maybe just add some onto the top of the tart or on the side. But the flavour really is in the puree. So now that we have our mixture, which is thickened, it's cooked, gelatin, the white chocolate's already in there, we can now pour into the tart mould, like so. Yeah, that looks great. Like I said, we're going to use every last bit of it. Just gently. This is why I prefer to use a spatula instead of a whisk, because it just gets every last bit. Making sure, like I said, every last bit, let's not waste it. Nice, vibrant yellow colour, and just ever so gently give it a nice wobble. This will just let it find itself, making it sure it's nice and flat. And I've got mine on a board here, as I've previously stated. We can't lift it. There's too much weight in it now for the tart shell as it is. You run the risk of it breaking. We've got a nice board here, a chopping board, whatever you can fit inside your fridge. Again, little shake, it's found its level, it's nice and flat. We can just lift this up and we'll put it into our fridge, let it set. It'll probably take around 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours before it's fully set, able to cut. Then we can finish it off and we can taste. That has now come to the end of the demonstration. I do hope that you have enjoyed it and that you at least try it at home, whether you buy the pastry case or you go the full recipe. It's up to yourself, but don't feel like you can't do it. It is accomplishable, and it'll make you feel better that you've achieved something. Here we have our finished tart. We've taken a couple of slices out of it so you can see where the pastry is, and the tart begins, the filling of the tart. And here is our restaurant quality finished dessert. Glazed, bruleed passion fruit tart, coconut sorbet, passion fruit gel, crushed meringue, and of course the star of the show, the passion fruit. Thank you, and good luck.